My wife and I were high school sweethearts. We were married shortly after she graduated from the police academy. I became an electrician. Our marriage was wonderful at first. I loved my wife's ability to operate as a respectable cop and honorable wife at home. She never let her ego go to her head, and she still allowed me to be the leader in our relationship. Over the next 10 years of marriage, we had one son. By this time, my wife was very comfortable in her role as a cop. She joined social media, updating her followers on a daily basis about her assignments and days spent monitoring civilians. When she was younger, she never wore makeup and hardly took the time to do her hair. One morning, I noticed the change in her routine. After eating breakfast and drinking coffee with me, she'd spend an hour and a half getting ready, which included her hair and makeup. I heard her phone pinging several times. We'd been married for more than a decade at this point, so I didn't feel right asking her for her phone. Instead, right before she walked out the door, I asked her who was messaging her while she got ready. She was really surprised I even asked. She said it was her sister. That was odd because her sister hadn't spoken to her in years due to some petty disagreement she couldn't let go. So I expressed my surprise and asked if they had made up now. She reluctantly told me they had, and everything was all good. Well, that was hard to believe, but I didn't see why my wife would lie to me. Still, I considered finding her sister on social media to ask her if this was the case. I got busy at work when I got a phone call from the local police department. This was bad. I instantly believed my wife had been injured on the line of duty. I answered it, my heart already racing. They told me my wife had been arrested. This was really bad, just not in the way I thought at first. I went to the police station, where I was told the story and showed video surveillance. They played the video first, because it was easier than trying to tell me what they saw. My wife pulled her cruiser into the parking lot of our son's elementary school. She got out and watched the children play from a distance. They were probably too far away for her to spot our son in particular. Then, a second car pulls up. A man gets out, and my wife rushes into his arms. It's as if they are meeting for the first time, or the first time in a while. They almost immediately start making out, and I can't believe what I'm seeing. They don't care that they're in public, let alone the parking lot of a school, with children playing a short distance away. AP is grabbing her butt before they stop, and she drags him by the hand into the backseat of her cruiser, leaving one door wide open, probably so they wouldn't be trapped in the backseat. Once the car got rocking, the back door shut. They were locked in the backseat of the cruiser. Fast forward just over an hour later, when additional police show up and open the back door for them to get out. I couldn't be sure, but this had to be the worst moment in my wife's entire life. This was the worst moment of my life. Finding out that she had cheated on me so shamelessly at an elementary school while acting as an officer of the law. All of my respect and adoration for my wife dissipated. I felt alone, lost, and foolish. I wanted to hold my son, which made me wonder how long my wife would be in jail. The officers didn't know. All they knew so far was that she was being charged with public lewdness, indecent exposure, and disorderly conduct. Her life would never be the same. I got to see her hours later, and I didn't have to say a word. She broke down, telling me how sorry she was. She said she'd started messaging AP online, and today was the day they decided to meet in person. She said she never thought it was going to escalate the way it did, but I told her to shut up and stop making excuses. She started an affair that she decided to consummate seconds after meeting the man. This was not the behavior of a respectable, knowledgeable police officer, wife, and mother. This was the behavior of a sleazy girl that didn't know any better. I told her how disappointed I was that our marriage was over, and that's when I started crying. All the time and feelings I had for her were wasted. The marriage I wanted to last a lifetime was over, suddenly. I would become a single father. When I left the room, my wife was only a shell of the woman she was. I filed for divorce while she served time in prison. I gained full custody of our son. After my ex was released from prison, she started visitation with him. I could tell that after doing time, she was only thankful. She was so relieved to be free and able to see her son. She deeply apologized to me again for cheating, but I told her it was in the past now. I also found a woman worthy of a serious relationship. Believe me, I was skeptical, but her actions and the way she lived her life showed me that she wasn't the kind to underestimate the purity and sanctity of marriage. Her husband had passed away unexpectedly, which was why she was single. She hadn't slept with anyone after him. We waited until our wedding night to love each other in that way. My ex, on the other hand, was too thirsty for this traditional behavior. 4 months after being released from prison, she became pregnant. I was shocked, because she used to be so responsible and on birth control. Of course, this man didn't want to be a father and hardly knew her, but they are still trying to co-parent while my ex continued dating. She claims to be searching for a husband, but she continues advertising herself online and sleeping with men she likes. It's no wonder why they don't see her as wife material. Here's a humorous update that just reassures me I was right to handle things the way I did. My ex then tried to seduce me one of the times I was picking up our son, even though I was married. OP, your wife had her dream life, a loving husband, a respectable career, and a child. It's hard to believe she went so far as to start talking to another man behind your back, while playing house and pretending everything was fine. Then she actually thought it was a good idea to meet AP at a school while she was on duty. As if that isn't bad enough, she decides to make out with him and have sex in public in the backseat of a car that can and did lock them inside. How embarrassing and shameful. And I'll still bet that women on social media would flock to support her and say she was within her rights to do what she did. People are loony, willing to defend anything. It seems like this was the start of the downfall in her life, because decisions she made after her release weren't any better. Anyways, thank you for sharing this with us. Now let's move on to our next story for today. My wife, 29 female, and I, 29 male, met while we were in college. She was extremely sweet and meek, but she was actually the one to approach me after a class we shared together. She asked me out to dinner and said it was her treat. My original plan was not to start any relationships in college. I wanted to graduate without distractions, but I decided to go out with her and use my best judgment. I honestly would have been surprised if I knew then how much I would fall for her. She was so kind, sweet, and shy. She didn't have social media apps, and she was extremely book smart. She was pretty plump, but she looked really good. I wasn't in it for looks, though. I knew better than to fall for any basic woman. At dinner, we really hit it off. We had a lot in common, and she seemed down to earth. I asked her out on a second date, and the rest is history. Eventually, she started hanging out with me in my dorm, and it was only a matter of time before she met my roommate. She was only shy around him, staying close to me whenever he was there. We would occasionally go out with a group of friends to have some fun, and the longer we spent together, the more she opened up to the friends we socialized with. She started to find her circle and connect with other women. That's when she joined a social app and added virtual friends. Around the same time, she started working out. At this point, we'd been in a serious relationship for 3 years, and we graduated. We got married around the same time my wife reached her goal weight. Her confidence and number of friends had tripled since the day she met me. I loved her with all my heart, and I was ready to be with her and only her for the rest of my life. She said she felt the same. After work one day, I made plans to meet my brother at a bar. I was under the impression that my wife was at home. As soon as I walked in the place, I spotted my wife. She was sitting at a table with my roommate from college. I hadn't spoken to him since before we graduated. I didn't even look for my brother, I just walked straight over to them. When my wife looked at me, her expression turned to humiliation. But within a moment, it changed to calm and defensive, like she already had a plan to explain all this away. I was right, because as soon as I asked what the heck was going on, she said they were just 2 friends out for a drink to catch up. My roommate could hardly look at me. He was trying to copy her calm expression, but he wasn't very good at it. I asked him to explain this, and he just shrugged and tried to play it off like she asked him to meet up with her as old friends. I wasn't buying it. I asked how often they messaged each other, and she was quick to tell me that it had been at least a year since they spoke. AP looked guilty and tried to play dumb while he agreed with her. This just didn't feel right. Then my wife tried to say I was jealous and insecure, because she would never do anything to betray the sanctity of our marriage. My brother approached the table and asked if everything was okay. I told him it wasn't, and I'd have to meet up with him another day because I needed to take my wife home. She was beside herself, extremely upset and irritated with me and the whole situation, but she still grabbed her purse and apologized to AP before getting up and leaving with me. At home, we had a big fight because she really believed I was at fault for not wanting her to meet up with AP without telling me. I asked her to give me her phone, and that's when things went bad. She started packing a bag dramatically, like my request was the last straw. Just before it was filled, she broke down crying without a word from me. She asked me why we had to do this, and I told her it was because she wouldn't see things my way. My way being that, hanging out with my old roommate behind my back and refusing to show me her phone was unacceptable. She finished packing, making sure her phone was in her back pocket before telling me she was going to stay at her aunt's house. I told her if she left, it would most likely be the end of our marriage because I didn't believe she was really going there. She was just appalled, but still refused to give me her phone, and so she felt like she had no choice but to leave. 20 minutes later, I drove to her aunt's house, and she was not there. Her aunt had no idea what I was talking about or where my wife would be. I sat in the car on my phone and looked up my old roommate. I messaged one of our mutual friends from college and asked if he knew where AP moved to. I explained some of the situation, and that was enough for him to give me his address. My wife's car was parked outside when I got there. I was about to knock on the front door, but I heard noises from the backyard. The house was surrounded by dense woods. It felt like my heart was about to explode when I saw them having sex. There was an in-ground hot tub right beside them, so I ran up at full speed and shoved AP into it. I thought about grabbing my wife and dragging her back to the car, but I had a moment of clarity. She chose to come here and cheat on me, instead of giving me her phone and admitting what had been going on. This was more than enough of a reason never to speak to her again. I decided I'd done enough and found out what I needed to know. She was absolutely shocked and hysterical. She wasn't really crying tears, but she tried to sound like she was upset or crying. She asked me what the heck I was doing, as if all this was my fault. I could not believe it. Then, as I started walking back to my car, she screamed for me to stop and come talk to her. She actually wanted me to talk to her about how I just caught her cheating on me. I spotted her keys laying on a chair and quickly took her house key. I left her there, screaming my name. I filed for divorce and refused to speak a word to her. The best part of this whole story is that she tried to continually sleep over AP's house, but after a few days he kicked her out and said he didn't see their relationship going anywhere. It started while she was married, so it's foolish to believe that that could have become anything serious or worthy of trust. Since he didn't want her anymore, she went to her aunt's for real this time. Her aunt was furious with her, reprimanding her like she was a child, in person and on social media. It was only 11 months later that my ex announced she was expecting her first child. She was not in a serious relationship and still isn't. It's been 5 years since our divorce was final and I have remarried. My wife doesn't even have a smartphone because she doesn't want to be sucked into this warped perception of reality that modern women have today. They don't know a good match when they meet one, and they are always willing to trade up as soon as they get bored. My wife knows this and refuses to do that to me. She wants to live a life comparable to her grandmother, and I admire her for that. OP, it's never acceptable for a wife to secretly meet up with another man. Even if she tells him she's going to, I think it would be best for the man to put his foot down and tell her no. What reason does a wife have to hang out or meet up with another man or men? It doesn't matter if it's a group of people. There's no reason why her husband can't be there with her. In marriage, they are one. She should never be talking to another man outside of her marriage unless he's related to her. Friendships, sometimes even between the same sex, often lead to complications in relationships. Either the woman falls for the friend of her husband, or her female friend supports her in her delusional thinking. As soon as a woman gets bored in her marriage or starts to convince herself that her husband isn't meeting her expectations, there's always a woman there to tell her she's right, and she doesn't need to compromise or try to salvage the relationship. It's clear that your wife never had the confidence she found in her relationship with you. She took it and used it to start talking to your old buddy from college the moment she got bored. It's very sad that women have no idea how to commit to their man or their decisions nowadays. and are encouraged to let their emotions rule them. The best relationships and decisions are made by choice, not constant gratification. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.